Welcome everyone to BPM RealTalk show. My name is Bianca Kruger and I am the host of this show. We really wanted to establish a platform where BPM practitioners around the world can come together and talk about their experiences and their journeys, their obstacles and successes, but most importantly, their failures. Hence, we started BPM Real Talk Show. Our mission remains to inspire, inform, and empower the community of BPM practitioners around the world. Today, we're going to focus on busting common myths. What really drives a successful change management? Today, we are also very excited to welcome Hardeep Kaur. With over 25 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry, Hardeep has been a driving force behind transformative business success. Hardeep is known for inspiring teams to tackle complex challenges head on and deliver outstanding results. Welcome to the show today, Hardeep. We're extremely excited to have you with us today. I'm going to hand over to you now to do an introduction of yourself before we get started with today's session.
Thank you, Bianca. I'm very glad to be here. So, my name is Hardeep Kaur, and I work for Merck right now in the business transformation, agility, and change leadership. I've been in the company, like you said, 25 plus years, and current project is really about digital transformation and change management.
That's amazing. Sounds like quite more than 2 decades that you've been at the organization. So, really excited to hear some of the insights that you'll share with us today. I think I'm going to go straight into the first question, Hardeep. There are many misconceptions around change management. What do you believe is the most common myth, and why do you think it persists in organizations today?
Like a great question, right? So, in my experience, I found that change is often not a linear process, right? It is not. It's messy, right? And one of the myths that is found is the whole aspect of control and predictability. So, folks often think that change management, very similar to project management, is going to have a start, a middle, and the end. Quite contrary, because you're dealing with people and people journey, it's not necessarily like that. And some of it is really deep rooted between just how the hierarchical structures are set up. So, if you look at leadership, they always want the control in terms of, yes, we've rolled out an initiative and we want everyone to be excited or everyone to be part of it and really start adopting the changes. And that's not necessarily the case, right? Folks travel through the change curve at their own pace, right? Because there's so many external factors that emotionally sort of get convoluted within that process. And then the also is the predictability, right? Humans are not predictable at all. And you can't predict, just like projects, that okay, it's going to have these amount of challenges, or it's this is the risk it's going to have. We can't predict any of that. So I feel like the misconceptions, like to wrap up that conversation, is really around control and predictability, which you can't have in the change processes.
On the back of that, Hardeep, in your experience, what are the key drivers of successful change management that often get overlooked due to these myths?
Sure. I mean, the common one I find is really the cultural aspects of it, right? And culture is very important component of driving any change because it's made up of people, and a culture is the kind of thing that you can't necessarily feel it, but you can feel if it's a good culture within the organization. So that's an important one. The other one is really the communication and engagement. So oftentimes we find that communication is, one way, right? Coming from the top. And the expectation is that we follow sort of through, but that's another myth that we struggle with. Another one is really the change capacity, right? So how much capacity do people have? And this is not about resources, it's about mental capacity to absorb changes within the organization. Also, I find adoption of changes is another big one. And one more driver that's overlooked is the resiliency and the flexibility and adaptability within the organization. So, a lot of folks, right, sort of struggle with this ambiguous situation that change takes you through because you don't have all your paths completely defined yet. So few that I sort of mentioned, right? Emotional intelligence, culture, communication, engagement, capacity for learning, capacity for adaptation, and the resiliency and flexibility are the few that sort of come to my mind. And my experience, I've seen them surface, over and over again.
Yeah, two of them that I actually have heard many times before, and that's actually very much a trending theme is the culture and communication. And I've heard that many times from other episodes as well. So it's definitely pulling through. Going on to the next question. Some say that change management is just about communication and training. How do you respond to this belief, and what elements are critical beyond these aspects?
Absolutely. I know that particular question's always elicits some sort of response in me, but I see it distinctly, different, right? So when I think of training, it's an event, right? It's an event you create with a very clear intent of upskilling somebody, or making sure they have the right behaviors and the attitude. Um, on the contrary, I think when I think of change management, it is far more than that. It's really making sure you have your right stakeholders engaged. It's making sure you get in front and understand what people are actually feeling in terms of emotions, right? You try to manage that resistance. You're making sure you have a robust communication plan, so that you're communicating with the folks and bringing them along the journey. You're also trying to understand what are the challenges and the risks that they are going to be facing, and what are some of the high level change impacts. And obviously, the very main focus of change management is really to make sure there's adoption and sustainability of your initiatives. So, training is an event, whereas change management is a journey, which we have to be extremely deliberate around, bringing people along the way so that you have that ownership at the end of your transformation or your change project.
I love that, Hardeep. You know, I've seen many times before as well where organizations ask the question, why did the change management fail? And they say, you know, we have communicated, we've done the training, but they don't take these other aspects into consideration. So thank you for sharing that. Do you mind sharing an example where a common myth about change management led to challenges or failures in a process improvement initiative? And what did you do to overcome this?
Sure, I have quite a few examples, but one that really comes to my mind is, celebrating too early, right? So it's almost like, again, we're so busy, and we think completing the training, completing the communication, and we are basically done, and we move on to the next project that's available. So to me, I think sticking around a little bit longer to see what the adoption actually looks like, right? Did people even sort of adopt the changes that you were actually going to be installing, and what does that sustain plan look like? So in my experience, we did a project where we celebrated the early wins, and then we were like, okay, I think we're done. We've installed and we've moved on. And on the contrary, that was not the case at all. The moment the project team moved on, the change team moved on, the change kind of fell through, and then we were back to old sort of behaviors and procedures. So early celebration is really, really an important factor for me. Just pause, think, make sure it's installed, have some KPIs in place, have some metrics in place to see have people really adopted the changes, and then sort of move on to the next project.
That makes absolute sense, especially what you mentioned about early celebrations. I think a lot of organizations face that quite often as well. Hardeep, going into the next question, and I think this one is, you know, going to be extremely interesting to hear your insight on this. And I know it's something that the audience would definitely benefit from. There is a belief that change management is only for large scale transformations. How do you address this myth? especially when dealing with smaller initiatives?
Very interesting questions, right? So I think that change management is needed for both, right? Because people are involved in both, whether they're large or small. Um, the extent of change management may differ for smaller projects, right? But they're needed, and part of it is because all of these projects will have the execution, of proper change and bringing people along, regardless of the size. I think for the larger projects, we have to emphasize a lot on the impact of the individuals. With transformation, the cumulative effect of those changes are a lot, right? Because there's many things going on at the same time, and oftentimes, the change capacity may differ, right, for folks. Building the change capability within the organization is far more important. Getting your organizations ready for the change, particularly when you're dealing with transformation. So I would say the prep level for transformation changes are different. Getting the organizations ready, getting the mindset, getting the resiliency, getting the change capacity may differ, and you probably have to do a lot more upfront for transformation project. But one cannot ignore the same level or same sort of elements, if you will, for a smaller change initiative. It's the extent that would make a difference.
Hardeep, looking ahead, how can organizations better educate their teams to dispel these myths and embrace a more effective approach to change management?
Yes, so with the particularly with technology, right? It's just moving at such a fast pace. So I think there are a few things that organizations can do. Proactive training, particularly around the growth mindset, around how do you deal with the change capacity, how do you create that resiliency and ability to bounce back from change after change, is very important. I believe the open, candid conversations and being transparent from the leadership around involvement of their people is very critical. I also think we need to have very robust metrics, KPIs around realization of the change. Right? Did we really install the change, and did we meet the intent? Is really important. I do firmly believe celebrating successes are important, right? And just making sure people are involved in that. The biggest one that comes to my mind is really learning from the failure, right? And having that agility within the organization, not necessarily waiting for the whole project to be over, but learn as you go along. Comes to my mind when I'm thinking about how can we actually prepare. Just being aware, and talking transparently with the organization definitely helps.
Thank you so much for sharing these insights, Hardeep. And, part of the reason for the establishment of BPM Real Talk is really for individuals to come forward and talk about those failures and challenges, successes, etc. People tend to normally focus just on the success and not the failures. But like you said, that's where organizations learn is through those failures, then adapt and move forward. Thank you so much for all this insights shared on this crucial topic. Before we conclude, is there any final message you would like to share with the viewers today?
Yes, I would. I would just encourage people to think about change is not something different, right? When you think of change management, it needs to be integrated well within your project initiative. So change and project management is, the best results you will get is if it's well integrated, within the organizations. It's not something an add on, and it's not something you should think about towards the end of the project. The earlier you think about your people journey, the better off the changes are sustained.
Thank you so much, Hardeep, for your time today and coming on the show and sharing these insights with us. To our viewers, thank you for joining us today. We'd like to remind you to stay connected with BPM Real Talk. We have many more exciting episodes coming up, each with its own perspective and inspiring stories to share. Be sure to subscribe, like, and follow us and stay updated on our latest episodes. Thank you for being part of this journey, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.